All right. Let's see. Is the stream popping up? Video. Let's see. I ended that stream. Okay, yeah, it's coming up. All right. I think we're live. So today we're gonna be dissecting Caleb Hammer's interview with Fox. Gonna pull up Draw.io and map out, usually do, the arguments on both sides, trying to come up with something. All right. Let me create new folder. Interview. What's today's? 08 2026 08 17. Okay. All right. Let's give it a shot. Let's give it a watch.
Well, the numbers don't lie. Americans are spending beyond their means. Credit card debt just hit another record, $1.28 trillion, and more people expect to be
All right. Record debt.
worse off a year from now. It's why voices like Caleb Hammer are standing out. He has amassed millions of views online cleaning up financial messes. Watch.
You're acting like freshly new job, first 16-year-old job ever, got my little card from work, spending. I feel like you never matured past 14. I don't like making payments on this. That's what a child says. I am angry. Actually
The
angry.
infantilization of adults happening
And he
before our
joins
eyes.
us now, the host of
Or the
Financial...
de-infantilization going on.
Audit on YouTube, Caleb Hammer. Caleb, good to see you. You don't look angry yet. Maybe we'll change that by the end of this segment. But let me start with you, sir, on credit card debt. Okay, we hit another record. I know this is kind of the bread and butter stuff for you. Are you really nervous about America's credit situation on the plastic?
All right. Question is he concerned? All right. We'll make a note. Is Caleb concerned about credit in America? Sounds like it's going to be leading into a yes.
It's bad. It's bad. In our consumer-driven culture right now, it doesn't matter what the job market looks like. When people are getting laid off on our show, it doesn't matter. People will continue their spending.
Okay. So he's mostly concerned with the credit culture. So, okay. Answer's yes, because of the consumerist culture of America. Notice he hasn't blamed banks or credit cards yet, or if at all, so far. This is mostly a matter of the culture behind those decisions.
People will continue their spending no matter what in our consumer-driven culture. I mean, right.
All right, evidence of this is that people continue to spend. All right, this is going to be evidence. People continue to spend even when without employment, let's say. That it's immaterial.
Now, it's not just credit card debt as well. It's bringing in buy now, pay later.
Okay. Here's another thing. It's not just consumerist it's not just credit in the US. It's also things like buy now, pay later. Yes, so he's concerned about credit, but he's also concerned about other forms. Also, also concerned about other consumerist habits, like buy now, that in quotes, buy now, pay. So it's not just credit, that's not his main focus. It's more consumerism, rampant consumerism.
26% of people that use credit cards regularly and hold those debts are now getting into buy now, pay later as well. Credit card debt as well. It's bringing in buy now, pay later. 26% of people that use credit cards regularly and hold those debts are now getting into buy now, pay.
Okay. So he's saying that 26% of people that hold credit, let's say month over month, are also getting into buy now, pay later. And this also constitutes evidence for his concern. Okay.
Later as well. It's only going to get worse.
And I'm going to actually tie this back in as evidence, or rather rationale, about the consumerist culture.
It's headed in the wrong direction, unfortunately.
Caleb, there's someone on my panel, though, who once told me that debt is as American as apple pie.
All right, we got another person
got
on.
to embrace it because eventually we'll grow, our wages will pick up, and we'll grow our way out of our debt crisis, whether...
Okay. So this woman's putting words in the other guy's mouth, but I'm going to assume that it's accurate. We have another opinion. So I'm going to rephrase this. Is credit in America concerning? And one opinion is yes, Caleb's position. And then we have no. I don't know the guy's name. But dominantly because wages can outgrow debt. Okay. This is why this guy is not concerned with debt, from what we've heard. Okay. Learn the guy's
country,
name.
or in your case, more poignantly, the credit card crisis. What do you say to people who say that?
Me.
Yeah, I mean, it is a part of our culture, right? I mean, like I said.
So Caleb is conceding that it's part of the culture, that it's, like he said, like apple pie, but I think he's going to say it's not a good part of the culture. But that doesn't really... So let's say it's because wages can outgrow debt. That's one reason. And because it is American. Okay. I think both this guy and Caleb agree that consumerism, or debt, both agree. Consumerism / debt accumulation is part of American culture.
We are very consumer driven, and I love my credit cards, but I use it properly. And 50% of Americans do not. 50% of Americans have a revolving balance.
All right. So here's another. So the culture is bad, but because it's being done improperly. Let's say the consumerist culture leads to improper usage of debt. Consumerist culture leads to, let's say, American, leads to improper usage of debt. This is the claim evidence gives. What did he say?
Month to month. 50% of Americans do not. 50% of Americans have a revolving balance month to month.
Okay, 50% of Americans have a revolving balance month to month. All right.
That's when that average interest rate in our country of about 20% is breaking down on that monthly basis and accruing, driving people into worse and worse credit card debt.
All right. And not only that, he's also making another claim that it leads to runaway debt. It leads to runaway household debt. You run away household debt because of interest accrual. And we're going to have that as another claim. Why? Consumerist culture, bad in the United States.
That's not building their households. In fact, 88% of Americans headed into 2026 said that they are financially stressed about their households.
Okay. So this has nothing to do with credit in America being concerning. Well, maybe credit has something to do with this, right? Maybe this is the reason. But he's going to be saying that. Does he say that that leads from this?
Yeah, that's not building their households. In fact, 88% of Americans headed into 2026 said that they are financially stressed about their households. They're struggling. 50% of Americans think they're going to die stressed and worse credit card debt. That's not building their households. In fact, 88%.
Okay. I think Caleb's position is the consumerist culture is bad. And I think it was 50%. I forget the number, but pretty much people feeling financially insecure about their households is evidence of this. Not necessarily that credit is bad. He's sort of conflating. It's like, okay, is credit bad? He says yes, because of the consumerist culture. And this is more evidence of the consumerist culture, but not necessarily that credit is bad, because it is. He's sort of conflating that this and this are associated. They're correlated, but he's saying that the runaway debt is why people feel financially insecure. But that's his claim, at least. Perhaps not borne by the study itself, but
and worse credit card debt. That's not building their households. In fact, 88% of Americans headed into 2026 said that they are financially stressed about their.
Okay. 88% of Americans. So Caleb pretty much is trying to associate the amount of consumerist culture, the the amount of revolving balance month to month with people feeling financially insecure. The question is, what 50% is not necessarily concerned. 50% is not the same as 88%. Where does the other 38% come from, right? That would be my one question.
They're struggling. 50% of Americans think they're going to die with that. Yeah.
You say 50% of Americans are going to die with that as well? We're going to say that's another reason he thinks that humorous culture is rampant. 50% of people believe they're going to die with that. Okay. Now these two correlate, right? I would assume that most people think that do have revolving balances month to month are going to think that they're going to die with it, right? Or maybe they're going to get out, whatever. The numbers are pretty similar, but yeah, I'm sure there are other factors that are going to play into this number.
National debt, it's there. We can't really manage it very well, obviously.
And another point he's making is that the national debt is not something that Caleb's concerned about. He's not concerned about the macro position. He's concerned far more about the household position. So, yes. I'm also going to say that Caleb's position how do I incorporate this? Okay. Another position. I'm going to say another claim. We'll put it up here. Like this. Caleb is not concerned is not as concerned about national debt, is more concerned about household debt. And I think we're going to have this be up here, something of a, let's say, elucidation or refinement of the position.
This is a household problem.
Yep.
People are not willing to stop no matter what the economic situation of the United States looks like. It doesn't matter to get the things they want. On our show, people think and say that it's because of an emergency. Oh, it's because I had to pay this bill. But then I go into people's spendings, and I know it's anecdotal because we're just looking at the people we're filming with, but even still, these are average Americans, and it's going to McDonald's. It's going on a trip. It's going on things that doesn't matter, things we call BS on our show.
All right. So here's another claim that people are addicted to luxuries / non-necessities in American consumer culture, even if unaffordable. Evidence of this: we're going to say anecdotes from interviews / personal experience.
Show. And that's what they are willing to just put on their credit cards to make sure they're happy and living the things that they feel they're entitled to, a part of our culture. So you're right. It is American, but it's bad.
Yep. So that's the crux of it, that he thinks that both agree that consumerism / debt accumulation is part of the culture. I'm going to put this over here. Caleb thinks that it's bad. And the other guy, I presume, is going to think that it's good.
Caleb, this is Marcus. I'm always
All right, this name is Marcus.
entertained by the way you speak to people, but what frustrates me about the way you speak to people is I want financial literacy to be the backbone of things, and I would imagine that financial literacy is what you think they're missing. Is it the lack of financial literacy, or is it the issuance of credit by the credit card companies and the banks that is ultimately the culprit? Who's the culprit in your mind?
All right, so Marcus asks a question. Is the culprit the people, the consumer, or the financial institution? So here's another elucidation. We'll do it. We'll have another refinement of Caleb's stance. Is the problem due to let's say personal due to financial institutions or the consumers themselves? I wonder if they disagree about this.
It's going to come down to the user in the end. I mean,
Yeah, it's the consumer, the user. Okay. It comes down to Caleb's position is that it comes down to the user / consumer.
we practice personal responsibility on our show. I was someone who had 3, 4 maxed out credit cards when I was in college, McDonald's, piano, you name it. It was my responsibility for getting into that debt. It was my responsibility getting myself out of that debt in my early adulthood.
Okay. So he's advocating for personal responsibility. So stance. So this is going to be another refinement, is that it comes down to the user's personal responsibility. They got themselves into debt, and they are responsible for getting them out, getting themselves out of it. All right. Okay. Personal responsibility.
And making more money and being responsible and learning a budget, especially in today's culture where we have access to more resources than any time in human history. GPT, Grok.
All right. So another aspect to this is that financial resources, financial literacy resources abound. This is more reason why people ought to be more financially literate. Resources are out there for you to learn.
You name it. Claude, you can search anything. You can read any financial book. You can watch any podcast like Financial Audit, and you can get your life together. Credit cards, it's a product. I understand why they're making that product, and we can make certain regulations around that product. But in the end, it is still someone going out, choosing to apply for that credit card, and then choosing how to use them.
Yeah. Okay. So not only that, but another argument is that people choose to apply credit in the first place. They are not forced to get it. That's another argument he's making.
I don't expect everyone to be perfect at 18,
19. Another thing, this is something like a refinement. Caleb does not believe that perfection is necessary for credit card usage generally speaking, especially when first starting out. It's a bit of a hedge, right? Saying he's effectively saying, yeah, people are responsible, but when they're first starting out, they may not know what they're doing, right? So they may still make bad decisions, even if they were the ones that decided to go into it in the first.
19, even up to way 25, but once you're in that adulthood and you're not using the educational resources that we have, it's your fault.
I appreciate you acknowledging learning, though.
Jackie.
Caleb, I'm just wondering if you think that social media has anything to contribute here, because what I've seen and
Okay. Another question. Does social media contribute? Come on. Hello. Does social media contribute to the problem?
we've always consumed and put debt on our credit cards. We've seen that over time in this country. But culturally speaking, with the rise of technology and Instagram and seeing what your neighbor has and seeing what that person has and the trip that they went on, I mean, people will kill themselves trying to take a selfie off the side of a cliff because they want people to see that.
Okay. Is it due to envy?
How much of this sort of consumption is and culture and psychological aspect is being driven by social media and contributing to what we're seeing?
Oh, we see it on our show every day.
All right. Extremely common. That is his answer. Extremely common. Extremely common. Evidence of this. Personal interviews. Well, let's say interviews, anecdotes, and personal.
If you remember the Labubu, the Labubu thing that was sweeping the world just a couple months ago, we had guests every single week that were maxing out credit cards just to get the next Labubu.
All right. Here's an anecdote. An instance of the anecdote. People maxing out credit cards just to get Labubus. I think that's how you spell it. I forgive me if I've spelled it wrong. But okay, Labubus.
Because it's posted everywhere online. And now we're not.
Okay. Because of hype generated by social media. Okay.
In the era of Beanie Baby trends lasting for years, we're in the micro trend where things get replaced every single month and people just have to be a part of the next thing. You don't want to miss it. And it's a huge part of our culture. But that's why I am happy that many states around the country, now more than half the states, have a personal finance class that is required to graduate from grade school. So
Okay. I'm going to say this is an elucidation of his position here. Requiring financial literacy courses in grade school is a good idea. Right? It pretty much informs and educates people in order to become more responsible for their own debt accumulation, credit usage.
Hopefully we're fighting back on that end as well.
Okay,
Buckle up here. Buckle
Caleb,
up.
Mr. Debt and Apple Pie might have a question for you here. Larry Kudlow himself.
Larry Kudlow. Okay. So this, I guess, wasn't Marcus's. It's Larry's. Larry Hudlow position?
Well, look, I think what you just said is very good. I mean, any education regarding personal finance is a very good thing, and I don't doubt that a lot of people mismanage their credit cards.
Okay, okay. So Larry? So this is going to be an elucidation of his point two. Okay. Move this over, give him some space. Doesn't doubt that some people mismanage their own finance, their own household finance. All right.
I don't doubt it, but I will say this. Household wealth in this country through the end of last year is $180 trillion.
Okay. Household wealth is 180 trillion. All right.
$180 trillion. Okay, that's everything: stocks, bonds, homes, cash, blah blah blah, and less liabilities, less credit card debt. So.
What does he mean, less credit card debt?
So your number 1.28 trillion. I think that was the number of credit card debt.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Household wealth is 1.8 trillion. Consumer debt or credit card debt?
1.2 less liabilities, less credit card debt. So your number 1.28 trillion. I think that was the number of credit card debt.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. Just credit card debt. 1.28 trillion in credit card debt. Okay.
Okay, but 180 trillion is bigger than that. Actually, I have to go a step further because I do believe debt is as American as apple pie. Sure. The country was founded on debt.
Okay. Country was founded on debt. This is another reason. Country was founded on debt. References Hamilton. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I've watched this before.
Hamilton, God bless him. I just spoke to him a few weeks ago. But the point is, we have debt in federal debt in public hands, which is about $30 trillion.
Federal debt in public hands, $30 trillion.
Okay. And that's even bigger than this 1.28 trillion.
Right.
But again,
I'm going to say $1.28 trillion in credit card debt pales in comparison to, let's say, public debt of 30 trillion. The refinement of this argument.
Compared to 180 trillion of household wealth, it's a debt equity ratio that any company would be proud of.
That's right.
Okay. The debt equity ratio, 180 to 1.28, is a good ratio. Is a fine ratio. Let's say this debt to equity ratio is a fine ratio. All right.
And the other one, 1.28 trillion. I mean, it wouldn't show up on the, you'd have to go from logs to indexes anyway. I just don't. It's not a catastrophe, okay? And we're living in a very prosperous times, and people.
What he's saying is that it's not a catastrophe. It is not a catastrophe. So this is going to be evidence for this position. Well, this is evidence for this position. Credit card debt is not a catastrophe. We live in a prosperous time.
If you produce, you create income. Consumers spend their income. But the education part, I'm going to give you a lot of credit, Caleb. The education part is really important, and I think that is missing from the story.
All right, Caleb, we'll give you the last word on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I do agree. We live in a very prosperous country, and a lot of people are lucky. I'm not freaking out on credit card debts in terms of like collapsing the U.S. economy. I don't want to bring it to that level. That's not what I'm trying to.
Okay, so Caleb agrees. All right, so these guys have general concurrence. Generally concur that U.S. economy is in no real danger of catastrophe.
To say, but from a household to household concern.
Well, I don't know if it's I'm going to actually have both agree here. And I think Larry, pretty much through saying that country was founded on debt, I'm not sure if he says no. He thinks okay. Larry pretty much thinks that. Larry thinks that financial literacy / education is in fact a missing piece of the puzzle. So I think he does agree with this portion as well. Larry and Caleb. And here's another general point of concurrence.
Where people are maxed out, where 50% are carrying those balances month over month at a 20% interest rate. People.
So yeah, that's another thing. 50% of people, we're going back to this. 50%, no. Yeah, 50% of people have a revolving balance month to month, and average interest rate. I think he said average interest rate, or let's say interest rates could be 20%. I don't think he actually said that average was 20%. So he's concerned that still, so this is a primary argument of his. I'm going to, so this is going to be a primary argument in order to refute that claim. Or which claim? That credit card is bad. Credit debt is bad. That it's something to be concerned of. That people are in fact going into pretty catastrophic conditions. That some people at the bottom are going into pretty catastrophic conditions.
where 50% are carrying those balances month over month at a 20% interest rate. People can't.
Oh, they are doing it at a 20% interest rate. So I'm going to delete this. At 20% interest rate.
Can't afford emergencies with that.
Can't afford emergencies.
Half the country says they can't afford an emergency if it pops up of like $1,000.
Okay, here's another thing. Uh, 50% of Americans can't afford a 1,000 to 1K emergency if it pops up. Okay.
The majority of Americans are feeling uncomfortable headed into this year about personal finances, and credit cards are bad. Card debt can be good. Credit cards can be used right. We love mortgages. I'm assuming.
So he says credit cards are bad, but I think he means credit or revolving credit is bad, because he earlier said credit cards can be used properly. I don't think he thinks credit cards in general are bad. Maybe their improper usage, generally speaking, is bad.
And everyone on the panel loves a good mortgage. I'm not complaining about.
Yeah, and so he's not complaining about debt. So this is an elucidation of his position. Debt is not bad. It can be used in good and healthy ways, like car loans and mortgages were the two examples that he gave. Okay.
Debt in general, I use it myself, but irresponsible credit card usage is bad for the household.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So pretty much what I was saying.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean,
okay. And Larry agrees. So we have improper credit usage is bad for the house. Both Larry and Caleb concur.
that's a key point.
Okay, we found agreement between the guy who helps people fight debt and Mr. Apple Pie and debt himself. That's an amazing thing. Caleb Hammer, that was so fun to hear from you. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you again soon, I hope.
And
well, the numbers still.
Okay, so that was that. Oh, maybe we'll go to that one next. But okay, pretty cool. So I think this was interesting. I think Caleb had a lot of good points. Larry wasn't talking as much. It was mostly Caleb talking, but he also made a decent point that at least these two numbers don't seem to be bad, right? This debt to equity ratio seems to be fine. At least with regards to just credit card debt compared to household wealth. I wonder what total household debt compared to household wealth looks like. Total household debt versus household wealth ratio in America. Okay. 18.8 compared to 184. And mortgages make up a pretty decent amount of that. Okay. So 18.8 trillion household debt as compared to 184 trillion of household wealth. This puts the debt at roughly 10% of overall household wealth. And historically, Google GPT or Gemini is saying that this is a very strong aggregate solvency position compared to historical norms. I'm going to ask, what does the history of this look like? And why does it seem strong? Okay. Debt to wealth ratio has fluctuated between 4% and 20% over the last 70 years. Current position of about 10%, looking exceptionally strong due to unprecedented asset price appreciation, so things like households or homes in general, paired with massive post-2008 household deleveraging, so the amount of debt one needs to get into in order to actually get a house or a mortgage for a house. All right. Household wealth exploded at a parallel vertical pace as compared to the debt, because the debt technically is saying is at record highs, but household wealth has exploded as well. Yeah, and it's a big portion of that was getting sub 4% interest rates. Okay, here we go. While the macro metrics look pristine, relying entirely on aggregate data risks, ignoring severe hidden systemic exposures, including the potential for significant financial distress for lower income households. The wealth concentration illusion. Wealth metrics are heavily skewed toward the top 10% of households, and that's exactly what Caleb was getting at, right? You have the households effectively thinking, like 50% of Americans, or perhaps household, thinks that they're not doing too well, right? 50% of Americans can't even afford a 1K emergency if it pops up. They just don't have the savings. 50% of Americans have a revolving balance month to month. That's a big issue. So this goes strongly with that, right? Wealth metrics are heavily skewed toward the top 10% of households. And so this isn't an income to debt ratio, right? This is a wealth to income ratio. Wealth to debt ratio. Cash flow mismatch. The bottom 50% of households hold minimal asset wealth but carry disproportionately higher debt to income ratios. Okay, what this means is that the bottom 50%, they don't have anything, but they're the ones that actually have the debt, right? Higher income households, they just don't, or rather higher wealth households don't really care about that because they've already got a lot of wealth. Yeah, so I think both positions are valid in their own way, right? But I think Caleb's position just has more going for it, right? It really comes down to, okay, so I'm going to make my own judgment. Both facts, well, let's say I would lead stronger to agreeing with Caleb, right? I think we should be caring more about Americans, the population as a whole, rather than aggregate numbers of wealth as a whole, right? We should be looking at households, not aggregate wealth to debt ratios. So if 50% of households can't even afford emergencies, 1K emergencies, then yeah, being in debt with 20% interest rates is not a good thing. It's not a good place to be, right? For normal Americans. And I think that's the big thing, is that for normal Americans, credit is a big issue. Well, let's say improper credit usage is a big issue, because we can pretty much assume that the 50% of Americans that have the resolving balance month to month are also the Americans that don't have a lot of wealth, right? They may have high incomes, but they're just blowing it all. And so they can't ever save for anything because they're always in debt, right? So it's not, I wouldn't even say it's a income issue, perhaps, because there's a lot of people out there that even with a high income, they just blow all their money every month, right? And they're still in debt. So it's a matter of discipline and just knowing how to live within your means that really allows one to get outside of this problem. So I think Caleb's position is even more nuanced because it doesn't blame credit usage per se. He made sure to explicitly say the consumerist culture of America. So I think that is probably the most honest take from the two positions, and it's the take that I would personally agree with, that yes, credit card usage is a problem for normal Americans. I don't think it's a problem for wealthy Americans. Top 10% don't have an issue with it in terms of them being able to accrue and hold wealth. But for normal Americans, yeah, credit cards, debt in general seems to be a large issue. And you could see it, right? I mean, the fact that Caleb has people on the show, normal Americans that have all these issues, that constantly he sees things all the time of people going into debt and not being able to come out of it. It lends itself to not the average, but the personal connection of, this is an American that's going through these issues, like an average American. You know, it's a story that you can see with your own eyes, as opposed to simply doing an aggregate, these sort of aggregate economics measures to see what's going on in the background, right? And these are people that, you know, these bottom 50%, they're not even the ones with any mortgages, right? Like it says here, the vast majority of the $18 trillion that makes up the total debt, the total household debt, isn't even credit cards. It's mostly mortgages, auto loans. Let's say just mostly mortgages in general, only up to 70%. Yeah, so I think I would lean more towards Caleb's position. I think this, just going off this one number, is misleading. I think if one were to look at a single household that, let's say, had $180,000 of wealth as compared to 1.28K in debt, that's a healthy household, right? If you had a household with that ratio, a single household, then yeah, that's great. This is exactly where you'd want to be. Sort of like what Larry was saying, that if any one single corporation, right, any single entity had a ratio like that, great place to be. But simply throwing the aggregates together and then doing the ratio afterward, that's a bad measure. So I think maybe a better metric might be to individually, I'll zoom in, to individually, for each household, compute the household wealth to debt ratio have the debt be broken out into, let's say, into categories for more info, and then look at the distribution of those ratios across all households. I think that would be a more honest metric if you wanted to go ahead and do that, right? And then you can look at the median of this as a single ratio that you could look at and say, yes, this is the average household wealth to debt ratio. And this percentage of it is how much debt contributes to that. So I think I'm going to put this here and see if it could give me some numbers. What would that look like? Okay, here we go. Oh, sweet. Is there a way that this is available? Has someone made that graph? Okay, let's see this. I want to see this graph. What would the okay. Let's just see what the distribution looks like. So, household segment, top 10%, they have the 10 to 1 or 50 plus to 1 wealth to debt profile. Primary debt, mortgages, and financial reality. Debt is used strategically as low-cost leverage to build more wealth. Okay, next 40%, the balanced middle, 2 to 1 or 5 to 1, fixed-rate mortgages, auto loans, high asset values. These people have home equity, 401ks, which outpace the debt, but cash flow is sensitive to monthly payments. All right. The next 40%, you have the debt that matches or exceeds the wealth. So only 1 to 1 or 1 to 2. This is what people are mostly worried about. This is what Caleb is worried about. So this, I think, is going to be the much more a much more honest metric, right? And this is what this guy or Gemini pretty much recommends to use, because it says individual wealth to debt distributions are skewed so drastically by billionaire fortunes. The Federal Reserve tracks the median leverage ratio, total debt relative to total assets, strictly for households that hold debt, right? Yeah, so for the segment of Americans who actually have lines of credit, the median leverage ratio sits around 29%. So it's more like a 3 to 1. So it's more about in the next 40% of people. It lies here. It doesn't really lie down in the bottom 50. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention the bottom 10%. They have the negative ratio where more debt than assets. These people are underwater. They have high interest credit cards, medical debt, payday loans, personal loans, and they're completely insolvent. They pretty much make up 8% of US households, have zero or negative net worth. All right. I think yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So this is going to be what we would want to look at as a more honest metric, median leverage ratio. in America. Okay, 1.9. Anyway, yeah, so mortgage. The mortgage is a good it's a good form of debt, right? You're building up ownership, equity into a house, into something that appreciates, hopefully. You also have student loans, which, ideally, in a perfect world, turns into stronger prospects in the future for the student, right? For the graduate. But then you get bad debt, which is credit card usage. And this is what this is what both Caleb and Larry agree on, is that improper credit usage is bad. Credit cards, blah 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 blah. And that's most of what Caleb's argument Caleb's argument revolves around. So yeah, I think now we know where the 50% comes from. It's the people that are the bottom 50%, right? The ones that have the near 1-to-1 ratios of debt matching what people's wealths are, right? So effectively net zero wealth households. This is interesting. Yeah, looking at this breakdown, I definitely think that Caleb's position is the stronger of the two, right? I think this method of first calculating the leverage of each individual household and then seeing the distribution of it is the stronger metric as composed to simple aggregates, right? It's interesting, yeah. So that was interesting. Let's see how CNN does this. I haven't actually watched this one, so I'm interested in.
I just launched the brand new Hammer
What's
Elite
going
app,
on?
available on every major platform. To celebrate the app launch, I'm offering 30% off the annual plan in the month of June only. Plus, I have an exclusive offer just for you. But I'll only have 1,000 available to purchase. You'll get lifetime access
gonna
to the
change
entire
this to the
Hammer Elite
CNN.
catalog and my Hammer for Life
I
box
can't
packed with
change it?
limited
Oh.
edition merch. Download the Hammer Elite app by using the link in the description or pinned comment down below. This is the best membership you'll ever join, and that's a promise.
So I want to bring in Caleb Hammer. He hosts Financial Audit on YouTube and is the CEO of DollarWise. He's been described as a cross between Dave Ramsey and Jerry Springer.
So, yeah, we'll keep it in here. We'll have just a separate area for it.
I'll
Fine.
let you fact check that, see how you feel on it. But when it comes to getting your personal finances in line, and Caleb, you see these headlines about Americans struggling with their credit card debts, now $1.25 trillion according to the New York Federal Reserve Bank. What do you see people spending on?
So yeah, similar numbers, right? 1.25 trillion. That's what the 1.28, 1.25, something like that.
That isn't quite working? Like, what are the biggest mistakes that you find people are making?
Okay, so CNN comes at it from personal responsibility angle, right? Like, what mistakes are people making?
Well, the reality is,
okay, so this one is not framed as a question in terms of like a value judgment of whether credit is concerning. It's more like, what mistakes are people making? Right, so it's more like asking an expert for his opinion.
40% of Americans right now can't even cover a $400 emergency, yet
Yeah. Okay. So similar to this, he said 50% can't afford something like 1K, but now he's saying 40% can't. All right. So what mistakes does Caleb think that Americans are making in personal finance? And one mistake is that they cannot afford a $400 emergency. 40% of Americans cannot afford a $400, which is shocking. Yeah, wow.
When I look into the data and I look into their spending on my show specifically, which are the people messing up, to be clear, but usually.
Yep. So he's saying that the people that he cares about are the ones that he does the case studies, which are the ones that are financially irresponsible, right? So that goes to show that he's, all of his arguments on the previous one was focused on the people that are in debt, right? All the people that the average American debt is what he cares about, effectively.
Those people who can't afford that $400 emergency, they're still going into the gas station, grabbing an energy drink every day.
Okay. We'll say that generally speaking, people are addicted, or rather, what is he claiming here? Well, people go into the gas station and buy an energy drink every day, even though they can't afford a $400 emergency. So I think that people have bad priorities when struggling financially. And an instance of that is the story that he just said. So, and people might be in debt, yet still spend money at a gas station, buy an energy drink every day. And like that's the thing, like why are you buying an individual why not just buy like a 6-pack of them once per week? If you're going to buy it, at least try to buy it at a discount, right? Maybe simply cannot be afforded. I don't know.
Stopping somewhere to eat multiple times a day, door dashing at a 90%.
Okay. Eating out all the time. Another instance of these arguments are assuming that the person is in a bad financial situation, right? These two assuming struggle.
Percent premium to their house. Those conveniences that are.
Oh yeah, and then DoorDash, eating out all the time, plus DoorDash.
Small, but really add up. The death of 1,000 cuts is really hurting the household budget at the end of the day. And of course, they're putting them on credit cards, which have a close to average interest rate across the country of around 22%.
So that was an average. Wow, 22%. People are doing interest at 22%. Not smart. Yeah. So, elucidation of this: choosing to go into debt for conveniences when broke. That's pretty much it. Go into further debt Sorry, I need to redoing these. Okay.
Imagine that compounding on a monthly basis when you're still putting unnecessary spending on it. It just becomes
Oh yeah. Also, average of 22% interest rate. There we go. 22% interest rate on credit that finances these.
an uncontrollable mess in the end.
And like everyone could be better with their personal habits. I'm sure we could go through each of ours and find like, oh, well, why are you spending this much on this much on that? How much of this is compounded by some of the systemic issues?
Okay, so here we go talking about systemic issues. So he's just trying to ask Caleb to elucidate his opinion. Question. In what ways do systemic properties affect this dynamic?
That we're running into right now, like inflation, and especially since the COVID pandemic?
E.g.
Yeah, systemic issues certainly play an impact on everything. The thing to ask yourself in the end.
So he says generically it does play an impact. Okay. Agrees. Generically it does. Systemic issues do play an impact. So he does agree with the premise. What is it his priority?
And when I talk to people about their budgets is, can you control the systemic issues or not? You can go cast a vote and you can advocate for a position.
Okay, so he's coming at it from a stoic perspective. Generically, systemic issues do play an impact. Emphasizes those aspects which can be controlled. For instance, e.g., casting, vote, etc.
Childcare, for example, it rivals now a college.
What was he saying?
The systemic issues or not? You can go cast a vote and you can advocate for a position.
Yeah, casting a vote, advocacy, general, etc.
Childcare, for example, it rivals now a college degree or a college tuition. And if you put two children together, it's more than the median cost of rent in any state in this country.
Wow. Childcare costs more for two kids than the median rent. Okay. Oh, whoops. Okay. Instance. Childcare for two children rivals median rent. It's a systemic issue. That's not something that we can control. Claims.
These are systemic issues. But in the end, what you do have control over on a daily basis is where you choose to spend your money, whether.
Okay. So that's all right. So let's put that there. So this is one aspect of his argument. Another aspect is people have control. People decide where to put their money. So at the end of the day, systemic issues may exacerbate the impact, but people at the end of the day decide where to put. Let's
Or not you get that 2-bedroom if you don't need it. There are a lot of personal choices that impact your absolute daily life when you can't control whether or not we go into Iran. Sorry, not going to happen for the average person. I didn't really get a say in that one on that day. But you can control your daily spending, and that's why we created Dollarwise, the budgeting app, so people could control their daily.
Right. So people decide where to put their money. And he's saying that budgeting is an aspect of intentional slash thoughtful spending. And I think he puts the greater priority on emphasizing this aspect of the issue. So he does say that, yes, systemic issues do play an impact, but at the end of the day, people decide where to put their money. So that's the emphasis.
Spending.
You know, I think there's a tendency always from older generations to sort of look down and say, hey, you know, when I was coming up, I was able to buy a house by 25 and start a family, and, you know, different world, but it happens. And I just wonder, what do you think older Americans should know about what Gen Z and Gen Alpha coming soon are facing, and what's different for them that maybe previous generations didn't have to deal with as much?
Yeah, there's a couple things the older generations get right and a couple things they get wrong.
Okay. So here's the question. So, I'm not even sure if this goes off of the questions, anything here. I think this is just another generic question. Yeah, this doesn't seem like a follow-up question. This seems like an entirely independent question. So, pretty much, what do older generations not understand about financial situations of the younger generation? Parents and grandparents, like that he says. Caleb claims that they get some things wrong and some things right. All right. See what he thinks.
The reality is, to get in the median price home, the household has to make $120,000.
Okay. In order to get into the median home, household has to make greater than 120, did he say?
Is to get in the median price home, the household has to make $120,000.
Yeah, okay. 100 greater than 120K. Okay. An expansion on this point.
In this country, some spots are going to be higher, some are lower, but that is the
Yeah, okay,
median.
more or less.
That is double. The monthly income required is now $3,120 on a monthly basis.
Okay, so more than double. Okay, yeah, so just going to add this. This is more than double average. Let's say median. I had to say apples to apples. Median household income. I think that's what he's.
Ownership costs, that alone, which has doubled since 2020. That is not.
And ownership costs in general. Have doubled since All right, all right, all right. So these are things that he's claiming that older generations may not understand. Say this. May not and do. Bring this over here. Bug. And okay. And might be other things that they may.
Something an older generation had to deal with. But some
Right, okay. It wasn't part of their lived experience. He's not saying that they may not understand, but was not part of older generations' lived experiences. He didn't say that they didn't understand it, but rather it's not part of their. Maybe they do understand it, but perhaps they don't. Perhaps he's claiming they don't commiserate with it or don't empathize with it.
something the older generation is right about.
Okay. Older generation is right about. He frames it. So he has two different framings, right? Like he's not saying that the older generation perhaps doesn't understand this. It's just that it wasn't part of their lives back in the
Is
day.
the cost of most things in our lives as a percentage of our income has actually gone down outside.
Okay, cost of most things outside of what?
Cost of most things in our lives as a percentage of our income.
Okay, cost of most things as a percentage of income has gone down. Not sure. Okay.
Has actually gone down outside of a few key areas. The key areas where it is not is buying a home.
Okay, except buying a home. Pretty significant except. Except. Actually gonna put a diamond here. Except. Buying a home.
Healthcare, pretty important.
Healthcare, pretty important also. So pretty fundamental things.
And the cost of school also pretty important.
And cost of school. Okay, yeah. So these three things are rather important and have gotten more expensive as time goes on. And this also, I assume, would not be what most older generation might not commiserate with. Can I add kinks in this? How do I add a kink? So if I do this, bear with me. I'm learning something right now. That didn't work. How do I add another kink in a line in draw.io? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Okay. Something we can look up. Draw.io. In. Okay. So you click drag anywhere to add a new waypoint. Why is this not? Hello? Okay. What? Another green. Okay, here we go. Okay, here we go. Here we go. Okay. That's good enough. Okay, okay. Let's get back to the video.
But as far as things like groceries, even going out to eat, many of the dopamine fueling things
Okay, I think we're coming to a crux of the argument. The dopamine fueled things. So, fundamental things, it seems that, like important things, long-term things, are getting more expensive. That's what he's claiming. Short-term, not short-term, let's say consumer goods slash necessity, like groceries. Let's say goods. Grocery and consumer items are now cheaper. I think the implicit argument here is that elucidation is older generations think that younger generations have it good, or right? I mean, I think that's implicit in what older generation is right about, right? It's like cost of things as a percentage of income has gone down. It's why? Because older generations think that younger generations have it good. That their situation is no longer, i.e., their situations are not significantly different, more different than older generation.
that we like to chase, as a percentage of our income, they have actually gone down. So there's a lot of things that are better about living in the current times as a younger person, but there are objectively some things that are worse that the older generations need to realize. But of course, it was the older generations that put in the zoning restrictions that we have across this country that made the homes go up in value the way they have. So I guess.
Okay. An elucidation of this, at least this one, he doesn't blame them for anything, but here, zoning restrictions that older generations implemented contributed to house prices increasing or outpacing income. This is one thing that not only the older generation does not understand, but also is culpable for, in part at least, that Caleb is
we have
claiming.
them to thank for that.
You just gave some parents and grandparents some valuable ammunition on this Father's Day. So hats off to that. We were talking about sort of the simple things, or maybe not so simple, but everyday buying and purchases that might actually make a difference in someone's budget. What are you telling people to ride out some of the problems that are hopefully temporary, like, for example, high gas prices?
On December 14th, 2012,
All right, let's go through this
my
ad.
7-year-old son Daniel was shot to death in
Yeah, I mean,
I'm gonna have to repeat that.
What are you telling people to ride out some of the problems that are hopefully temporary, like, for example, high gas prices?
Yeah, I mean, you.
Okay. Advice to ride out temporarily high prices on things. Okay. So I think this is actually going to be a follow-up on this. I think he's effectively contending that some goods are not so cheap, right? Question. Not as like a direct contention, but rather as a question. Advice on how people ought ride out temporarily inflated consumer prices. Fair question.
That is a reality. If you're not in an electric car, you have to ride out the high gas.
Okay, here we go. Iran war drives prices higher for American consumers. So yeah, this is going directly against the narrative that Caleb was trying to establish. Okay, interesting.
Prices, but what you do have control over in the end is the car that you get. And
What you have control over is the car that you get. So is Caleb advocating, oh, just switch to EV? People have control over what sort of car they can own. Like adopting EV. Interesting. Okay. So it goes back to the Stoic messaging that he was pushing, right? People decide where to put their money. I'm going to, in fact, bring all of this. Oh, whoops. I'm going to bring all of this over here. I'm going to have this be a reiteration of this point. Okay. Interesting stuff. All right.
we know in America that people get more car than they need. They spend way more on a car than they need.
Okay. Also, people, so he's not talking about gasoline anymore. He sort of changed the subject. People spend way more on the car itself as American consumers than they need. So he's sort of claiming the little decisions that you make along the way really affect little bumps in the road that may happen in the future, right? He's not saying, oh, from the point of your current financial situation, how do you fix gasoline? How do you cope with gasoline prices inflating? It's more like, oh, you should have made better decisions in the past so that that you have enough margin for error that this sort of fluctuation, this temporary inflation, doesn't put you into bad situations.
A newer car to justify it with safety ratings, fuel efficiency, which can be beneficial right now, but they still get into a $50,000-$60,000 car on an 8-year term at a 12% interest, and it absolutely destroys their household budget. It just doesn't work in the end. Yes, in America, we need a car to have a job to pay for our car. That is a reality. That is
Okay. So he's coming back to a systemic issue, right? So, I wish I had like a shortcut thing where it's like, oh, shortcut here links to something over here, but we'll deal with it. Oh, it was down here. Sorry. Systemic issue. Okay, so this is something where it's saying, I'll do a squiggly line. Okay. Generally speaking, you need a car in order to have a car. I'm sorry, in order to have a job, in order to have a car. So catch 22, right? That's pretty much what he's saying. Right?
the infrastructure that we live in, but you do have the choice on how much car you get.
Right. So he comes back to this. You always have choice in how much car inevitably get. You got to bootstrap yourself, right? That's always what people are saying. So he concedes that things are perhaps systemically unfair, right? You need to have a car in order to pay off a car, right? But at the end of the day, people have a choice in how much car they need or that they wind up getting.
And get it checked out by multiple mechanics before you sign that deal. Make sure you're not getting any predatory interest rate, but you still have the choice on the car that you get, which
And be wise about interest. Right? So interest is where you put your future money, right? It's a decision on where you decide to put your future. Be wise about getting good deal on not just the car, ensuring that it's mechanically sound, but also about interest, paying it off. This is pretty much an argument for being smart about what you choose to invest your money, right? People, and that goes into how people decide to put.
is a big determining factor on your monthly budget, even if you can't actually choose between the gas prices.
How would you're talking about doing so much work on the front end, which obviously sounds great on paper and advice.
Yeah, so that's what I was saying. It's like he's talking from a position of what people ought to have done to not be in a bad situation given current circumstances. But I'm sure that he's going to go with, oh, but what can people do now, assuming that they have a bad circumstance?
I think just get in there and just get me the quickest thing as possible so that I can get out and do what I need to do. How would you compare sort of the risk factor of delinquencies on payments, for example, that maybe they didn't quite think out versus the work on the front end in terms of cost?
Well, if you're not willing to put in the work on the front end for pretty much anything.
All right, so this is a new question, right? We're going to say what recommendations do you have for people that haven't put in the work up front slash have not made wise financial decisions leading up to present? Right. So what we were discussing is that these are all fine and dandy, assuming that you have you have put in the work up front, but it's not what many people find themselves into, right? If people had put in the work up front, they would obviously not be in dire straits, right? I make it a cool little hop like that. Okay. Yeah, I wonder what he's gonna say. Probably gonna be like, okay, you have the choice to be smart about decisions from here going out. From here on
you're
out.
going to face consequences for it. And when you have delinquencies and whatnot, if you have that affecting your credit, that impacts everything down the line. The next time you get a car, you're going to be getting like a 20% interest rate, and you're going to be getting something predatory. You won't be approved for anything beyond that. You're not going to get an interest-free period on a credit card transfer, most likely. You are going to always be in a harder time. Get an apartment, you're not just
Okay. So bad decisions. So he's elucidating, right? So bad decisions lead to bad circumstances in all financial aspects slash opportunity. Right. So that's what he's saying. So putting in the upfront work is required. You can't just skip it, right? Instances of this is that bad credit leads to bad deals on interest rates and fewer opportunities, right? So I think that pretty obvious.
putting down a security deposit, you're also going to be putting down first month, last month. So the question is basically on anything you do when it comes to taking out a debt is you really need to understand your budget. You need to plug everything into something like that. Otherwise,
Yep. Okay. So that's pretty much what he's saying is that effectively just have to make good decisions. It comes down to just making good decisions. So he's pretty much saying the emphasis, the focus of personal finance is just that, the upfront work. It's not rather than expediencies that might postpone or delay imminent crisis or financial catastrophe.
understand where your money's already going, how much you can afford, or else you will end up in those defaults or delinquencies. But before you ever miss a payment or allow it to actually go there, make sure you call your creditor first. There are many options. Even on that vehicle like we were talking about, they can take that payment and put it on the end. And they'll do that for a few of them. They will before they come and repo your car because they actually make more money in the end. That's just more time for interest to accrue. Even on credit cards, they'll put you on a lower interest payment, lower payment plan as well for a while. They want their money.
And not only that, he's also arguing that options do exist in order to lessen the burden to an extent in the present in order for breathing room to be made in order to pursue healthy decisions in the future. And instances of this involve effectively contacting one's creditors. Trying to get on a payment plan, postponing payments, later dates, etc. But these are, of course, short-term expediencies. They're not going to resolve the problem, the root of the problem.
If you default, they sell it for pennies on the dollars. Many of them will work. They will work with you, but you have to call them first.
Caleb Hammer, host of Financial Audit on YouTube, CEO of DollarWise. Good to see you. Thanks for being here. And if you watch his YouTube, this was the least direct, most calm version of the conversation that I think I've seen you have. But I appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you.
All right. Well, there you go. Yeah. So this one was a little more interesting than the other one. I think the other one, it was more like two people referencing one question, right? Is credit in America concerning, right? Whereas this one was more like trying to shift the frame of philosophy, right? And it really had more to do with systemic issues, right? Like, for instance, what was it? So it first starts like, what mistakes do... So it starts within what I would imagine is Caleb's frame, right? Like personal responsibility. That's what he was going after, right? I think over here he was saying that it comes down to the user's personal responsibility. They got themselves into debt and they're responsible for getting themselves out of it, right? This is something that's pretty straightforward in the previous interview. But here he is saying, what mistakes does Caleb think the Americans are making in personal finance, right? They're just making bad decisions. They have bad priorities and they're choosing to go into further debt for conveniences when they're absolutely broke. And he gives also this stat. These are instances of this. And this is also why things are bad, right? Like this is a reason why you don't want to be doing this, that interest rates are so high. And then it goes into systemic properties, right? It's like, okay, so you identified personal responsibilities as the, or personal decisions as the root cause, but we're going to have another cause that may be influencing this, right? Systemic properties like inflation, and things that are ultimately outside of a person's control, right? One of that is inflation. Other one is like gas prices. Where did that come in? Yeah, here's where that happened, right? Where he asked gas prices. So this happened later. Okay. I think this one happened as the second question, and then they got into older generations, right? Like, what do older generations not understand about younger generation? And yeah, so the CNN, I think, interviewer liked these answers, right? Of like, okay, it's healthcare, schooling, buying a home, ownership costs have doubled, things are just not the same as they once were, right? But also, goods like consumer and like groceries, consumer items are now cheaper, right? It's things that, so Caleb is saying, living in general should be cheaper, right? Like the older people were right about that one thing, right? Things are a little better in that regard. Now these, like these are so necessary, right? Like everyone needs a home. Everyone wants healthcare. Everyone ought to be educated, right? At least to some extent, right? Some necessary extent. But But the CNN interviewer didn't focus on those. He focused on gasoline, which sort of contradicts what Caleb was saying. And so effectively, Caleb goes back and says, well, people can decide whether American consumers need as much money as they can, need to put so much money into cars or automotive as they need, or as they are doing right now. But at the end of the day, yeah, I sort of predicted where the CNN interviewer was going to go, right? Like, okay, so you're saying that people should have done this a while ago, right? They should have had margin in their budgets, right? But what do you say for people that are currently in a bad spot, right? Like what should they be doing to get out of their situation, that are looking down the barrel of a gun, so to speak? And Caleb says, well, you just got to start being wise about money, right? Like you just got to put in the upfront work. You just got to start doing it, right? And I think it was interesting. Like most of the, like it started with, it was almost like Caleb had a narrative that he wanted to say about personal responsibility and about how things are possible, right? Like maybe not all things were as possible as they were in the past, right? But some things are still possible, right? Like some people can still, you can still eke out a living, like maybe renting and, maybe not buying a home. And if you happen to have been, in a health crisis, then yeah, you may be screwed. Schooling, maybe you're in a lot of debt because of that. But still, there are some bright sides. There are some upsides. And the CNN interviewer didn't decide to go into any of these, right? He decided to subvert whatever exception Caleb was trying to say, right? So I wonder if that was because he wanted to subvert Caleb being an expert on things, because there were all these things he could have talked into that would have agreed with Caleb's narrative. But at the end of the day, he decided to go and subvert the one aspect of it that contradicted this everything is systemically bad sort of narrative. That was really interesting, actually. Like the way that, they had multiple things they could have been talking about that they agreed on. Well, but I remember he made a comment like, "Oh, you gave ammunition for a bunch of
difference."
Oh man, like you gave a bunch of ammunition for grandparents this holiday
budget.
Season.
On this Father's Day, so
yeah, this one or Father's
Day.
Day.
Some parents and grandparents some valuable ammunition on this Father's Day.
So. Right. So yeah, you just gave the parents some valuable ammunition, but now I'm going to try to subvert that ammo.
So hats off to that. We were talking about sort of the simple things, or maybe not so simple, but everyday buying and purchases that might actually make a difference in someone's budget. What are you telling people to ride out some of the problems that are hopefully temporary, like, for example, high gas prices?
Okay, yeah, so he goes into high gas prices, right? Very interesting. And it does go back into, people trying to save money, right? And it's interesting because Caleb also didn't go off about Labubus in this interview, right? He was much more respectful to the financial, or at least much more reserved about illustrating the sort of financial idiocy that some people go down, right? Of getting into debt in order to spend money on things like Labubus, right? So he never even mentioned that. He had more, he was more reserved about elucidating just how ridiculous some spending habits are, right? And I thought that was interesting too, that he never really mentioned that. Like he mentioned things that, like, generic things of, oh, people just go into debt, right? People go into a lot of debt. Like they're going to a gas station to buy an energy drink, right? Like that's not so egregious of an error. Maybe eating out all the time and door dashing is not so egregious an error. And maybe that's him like knowing his audience, right? I think he realizes that Fox viewers are going to be more older generation, and they may like to dunk on the younger generation doing these silly things, right? And CNN might be for a more liberal crowd, which is more, I'll say, empathetic to people not in great financial standing. I don't know. So I think he chose his views wisely. Well, not wisely, but he discriminated what goes where, right? He discriminated, oh, the Fox viewers probably would enjoy this, but the CNN viewers may not be so appreciative of what he does or the the antics that he sees on a day-to-day basis. Because like these are a little more understandable or relatable than spending all your money on Labubu's. So yeah, interesting. In this case, I think it's less clear cut about which side I would agree more with. Like this was a pretty like a very like heavy-handed hand wavy thing of, oh, household wealth is doing fine because of this one ratio, which is pretty obvious how to make up a better metric, right? This right here. You just think about it for a second, and you can come up with a better metric. And it's pretty easy to pick apart Larry's view, but I think pointing out the systemic view is more nuanced. It has more it has a better like one can see where people would be coming from for that, right? Like in both cases, Caleb still goes with a rather stoic attitude of just focus on things that you can control, right? And that still includes the systemic issues. Like you can still go and vote on things, right? You can where did he see that? Like casting a vote, advocacy in general, right? But really he cares about the more high impact decisions that are more closely related to personal finance of where to put one's money, right? And that's really what's good. And I agree with that, right? I think at the end of the day, people should be more concerned about their own lives as opposed to abstract things out in the ether. They should be learning how to save themselves before they try to save the whole world, right? And at the end of the day, you should be learning from your own situation about how best to attack it, how best to address the problems in your own life. And yes, you can do a bunch of things to address systemic issues, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's going to be a good thing to do in order to address systemic issues, but ultimately the highest impact decisions are the ones that are the most localized to your own life. So in general, I think I agree more with Caleb, but I think this view is less it's less deceitful than this view over here. I think this is just something that one can discard pretty readily out of hand as a rather misleading metric. I think this is a more genuine view, even though it undercuts the narrative of personal responsibility, right? I think this one just simply says, oh, there's no problem, right? But I think this one actually acknowledging that issues that people do have issues, right? Like this fundamentally agrees that people have issues, right? So Caleb doesn't have to go ahead and have all these arguments of, oh, there is a problem, right? So Caleb spent less time arguing that there is a problem, and that's where all this comes from. Whereas they get pretty they agree pretty early that people have problems with their financial situations, but it more is deciding what is the cause of it. And I think that's where most of the dialogue was coming from. Anyway, that was interesting. I enjoyed seeing the two approaches to interviewing styles that Fox and CNN had. I appreciated that Caleb was consistent in his messaging, and that personal responsibility is ultimately, and also simply focusing on that which one can control is those are two of the messages that I think came clearly through both interviews, and I think those are wise principles to have at the end of the day. All right, I think I'm gonna end it there. Thanks for watching. I hope I'll see you again.